Graceland stands still. That's the whole point of it. A time capsule sealed on August 16th, 1977. We walk through its rooms and see the life of a king, frozen at the moment he left. The shag carpets, the custom furniture, the faint smell of history. But is it really a time capsule? Or is it a stage carefully managed and subtly changed over the decades? The official story is that the main house remains just as Elvis left it. But look closer. Listen to the whispers. Things are different. Small changes, big changes. Things moved, things removed, things added. And many of these changes have no clear explanation. They hint at a story different from the one sold with the ticket. They raise questions about who controls the memory of Elvis and why. Here are 16 changes, big and small, that suggest the Graceland we see today is not the Graceland that Elvis knew. Number 16, what is the source of the mysterious upstairs scent? Well, visitors to Graceland are famously forbidden from going upstairs. It remains the private sanctuary where Elvis passed away. The official reason is to show respect for the family and to preserve the space as Elvis's own. But longtime staff and some well-connected fans have whispered about something else for years. A smell, not a bad smell. A specific one. Some describe it as a mix of cologne, cigar smoke, and something floral, maybe gardenia, which was his mother's favorite flower. It's a scent that is reportedly unique to the upstairs area. Tour guides, when pressed off the record, have sometimes acknowledged a distinct aura or scent that lingers in the air near the top of the stairs. This isn't part of the official tour, of course. It's part of the folklore of the house. The change isn't that a smell was added. The unexplained change is its persistence. After more than 40 years of the house being sealed, cleaned, and preserved, how could a specific personal scent remain? Its odors are volatile organic compounds. They dissipate, fabrics are cleaned, dust is managed. Air is circulated, even in a sealed environment. So, the story makes no scientific sense. And yet, the reports continue. They come from people who worked there in the early days after his death, and from maintenance staff who have had rare access over the years. Author Patrick Lacey, in his book Elvis Decoded, touches upon the many myths of Graceland, and the upstairs is the epicenter of them all. He notes that the family's desire for privacy has created a vacuum, and stories like this rush in to fill it. So what's the explanation? One theory is purely practical. The items upstairs, Elvis's clothes, his records, his books, are all original. The fabrics and materials from the 1970s, combined with the specific wood and glues used in his custom furniture, might create a unique chemical signature in a sealed environment. It's not Elvis's ghost, but the ghost of his belongings. Another explanation is psychological. The power of suggestion is strong. People are told they are approaching a sacred, forbidden space. They know the stories. Their brains might conjure a scent to match the legend. It's the same phenomenon seen in supposedly haunted locations where people smell phantom cigar smoke or perfume associated with a long-dead resident. But the persistence of the story from credible sources, particularly early employees, is what makes it unsettling. They describe it not as a feeling, but as a real physical scent that would hit you at the top of the stairs. They cleaned the house thoroughly after his death. Vernon Presley lived there for a time. So did Aunt Delta. Surely their presence, their own smells, their cleaning products would have erased it. But they say it remained. The change then is that something which should have faded has inexplicably endured, becoming a part of the house's invisible architecture. It's a change by omission, a failure to decay as everything else does. What are the cleaning protocols for the upstairs? Is the air ever fully circulated with the rest of the house, or is it a truly isolated system? If a specific scent does exist, has anyone ever attempted to analyze its chemical components? And what if the scent is not a remnant of the past, but something being subtly replenished to maintain the mystique? To number 15, why was the iconic carport enclosed? Look at old photos of Graceland from the 1960s and 70s. You'll see a classic 4-bay carport on the north side of the house. That's Elvis would park his Stutz Blackhawk there. His friends would pull up in their Cadillacs. It was an open, airy part of the home's architecture, a symbol of a man who loved his cars and wanted them close. It was a functional part of the house. Today, that carport is gone. In its place is an enclosed room. It's now the trophy building connected to the main house. The tour flows through it. Inside, you see gold records, awards, and memorabilia. It feels like a museum wing. Because that's what it is. The change is obvious. An open space was walled in. But the explanation is where things get murky. The official reason given by Elvis Presley Enterprises EPE, the corporate entity that runs Graceland, is for display purposes. They needed more space to show Elvis's incredible collection of awards. And it makes sense from a business perspective. But it fundamentally alters the original design and feel of the house Elvis lived in. He didn't have a trophy building attached to his home. He had a carport. He displayed his awards in a specific room downstairs, which is still there, but the sheer volume of his success is now housed in this new created space. This change happened in the early 1990s. The decision was overseen by Jack Soden, the CEO of EPE. In interviews, he has always framed the evolution of the Graceland campus as a response to growing crowds and the need to professionalize the tour experience. The original tour, which began on June 7, 1982, was much more modest. The enclosure of the carport was part of a larger shift from visiting Elvis's home to experiencing the Graceland Museum complex. It was a deliberate choice to sacrifice architectural authenticity for exhibition space. It prioritized the legend over the man's actual living arrangement. What makes it unexplained is the lack of public debate or acknowledgement of the trade-off. It's presented as a natural extension, not a significant alteration, but it changed the flow of the home. The original carport led directly to the kitchen, the heart of the house. It was the informal entrance for Elvis and his inner circle, the Memphis Mafia. Enclosing it cut off that natural, informal access. It created a formal, curated path for tourists. It turned a back door into a gallery. This was a crucial step in transforming Graceland from a home into a brand. It was the first major architectural surgery on the house itself, a precedent that allowed for more changes down the line. Was there any opposition from the family to walling in a key feature of the home's original design? Did they consider building a separate trophy building on the grounds to preserve the house itself? How much did the enclosure change the physical stresses on the original structure of the mansion? And does the tour script acknowledge that this room was once an open carport where Elvis parked his favorite cars? Number 14. Who is buried in the unmarked spot? The meditation garden at Graceland is a solemn, quiet place. It's the final resting place for Elvis, his parents Vernon and Gladys, and his grandmother Minnie Mae. In 2023, his daughter Lisa Marie was also laid to rest there. There is also a small memorial plaque for Elvis's twin brother, Jesse Garon, who was stillborn. The graves are clearly marked. The layout feels complete. But for years, there was another spot. A plot that was visibly disturbed, that held a body, but had no marker. For a long time, the identity of the person buried there was one of Graceland's biggest and most sensitive secrets. The person in that spot was Elvis's aunt, Delta Mae Presley Biggs. She was Vernon's sister. After Elvis's death, she continued to live at Graceland, as was his wish. She was a link to the old house, the living, breathing home it used to be. She passed away in 1993, and she was buried in the meditation garden, near the family she loved. But for almost 2 decades, her grave was left completely unmarked. Tour guides were instructed not to mention it. If asked, they were to deflect. Fans who knew would leave flowers on the patch of grass, a silent acknowledgement. The unexplained part is the why. Why hide it? The official explanation that eventually emerged was that the family, and specifically Priscilla Presley, wanted the meditation garden to be focused solely on Elvis's immediate family line, his grandmother, his parents, and him. An aunt, even a beloved one, who lived and died in the house, complicated that perfect nuclear narrative. It made the family tree a little messier, a little more real. The brand is built on the simple, tragic story of a boy and his parents. Aunt Delta didn't fit the marketing. This theory is supported by the fact that after years of fan requests and quiet pressure, a small, simple marker was finally placed on her grave in the 2010th. It's discreet, and you could easily miss it, but it's there. This change highlights a central tension at Graceland. The tension between family history and public brand. Delta was family. She was there. She was a primary source for many biographers, including Elaine Dundee, author of Elvis and Gladys. Her life and death at Graceland were facts, but for years, the corporate entity running Graceland chose to edit that fact out of the physical landscape of the memorial site. Exactly. Change from an unmarked secret grave to a discreetly marked one didn't happen because of a change of heart. It happened because the secret became untenable. The fan community, through websites and forums, kept the truth alive until the official narrative had to bend to reality. Why was the decision made to initially leave her grave unmarked for so long? Who specifically made that call? And was it a unanimous family decision? What was the exact wording of the instructions given to tour guides about how to handle questions about the unmarked plot? And does the current discreet marker truly do justice to a woman who was a significant part of the Graceland household for more than a decade after Elvis's death? At number 13, has the spirit of Graceland been commercially exercised? This change is not about a physical object. It's about the feeling of the place. Talk to people who visited Graceland in the first decade it was open, from 1982 to the early 1990s. They described something different. It was quieter, more personal, the tours were smaller. The guides were often people who had known Elvis or were local Memphians with a real connection. The focus was on the house. It felt like you were a guest in a home where the owner had just stepped out. There was a sense of raw, recent grief. The souvenir shops were small, located in a converted carport area. The experience was about the mansion on the hill. Now visit today. The mansion is still there, of course. But it's no longer the main event. It's the centerpiece of a massive 200,000 square foot entertainment and museum complex called Elvis Presley's Memphis. This complex, which opened in 2017 at a cost of $45 million, sits across the street. It has sound stages, multiple museums for his cars and career, restaurants, and sprawling gift shops. To visit Graceland, you park in a giant lot, buy your ticket in a modern terminal, and are shuttled across the street in a bus. The experience is managed, streamlined, and corporatized. The focus has shifted from the home to the brand, from the man to the intellectual property. This is the biggest, most profound change to Graceland. The spirit of the place has been altered. The unexplained part is not that it happened. Business needs to grow. The question is whether it was necessary to change it so drastically. The decision was driven by EPE, now managed by Authentic Brands Group, a company that specializes in managing the estates of deceased celebrities like Marilyn Monroe and Muhammad Ali. Their business is brand management. In a 2016 interview with the Memphis Business Journal, Joel Weinschenker, a managing partner of Graceland Holdings, spoke of creating a more immersive experience that could keep visitors on the property for days, not hours. The goal was to capture more tourist dollars. This commercial exorcism has scrubbed away much of the grit and authenticity. Elvis's world was messy, human, and eccentric. The new complex is clean, efficient, and generic. It feels like any other modern tourist attraction. The original Graceland tour felt like an act of remembrance. The new Graceland experience feels like a transaction. The change reflects a shift in control, from the family's initial, more personal vision to a corporate strategy of brand maximization. The memory of Elvis is now curated by marketing teams and financial analysts. They have successfully separated the man from the home, turning the home into just one part of a larger, more profitable package. Could Graceland have remained financially viable without such a massive commercial expansion? How much input did the Presley family, specifically Lisa Marie, have in the design and tone of the new complex? Has the shift in focus from the house to the complex across the street changed the type of visitor who comes to Graceland? And has the raw emotional power of the original home been diluted by the theme park atmosphere that now surrounds it? Number 12, what secrets do the outbuildings hold? Behind the Graceland mansion, there are several other buildings on the property. There's a small brick building that was Vernon Presley's office. There's a smokehouse, and there's stables. On the tour, you walk past them. Vernon's office is open, restored to how it looked when he managed his son's affairs. The other buildings, however, are mostly closed. They are used for storage, for groundskeeping equipment, for administration. And that's the official story, but over the years, these unassuming structures have been the subject of intense speculation. The change is one of purpose and access. When Elvis was alive, these buildings were part of the working fabric of the estate. The stables housed his horses. The other buildings were used for various hobbies and for storage of his everyday stuff. After his death, they were gradually repurposed or sealed off. Their contents were cataloged, moved, or locked away. The public sees only what EPE wants them to see, and they don't want the public to see inside these buildings. Why? The simple answer is that they contain unglamorous things: lawnmowers, spare parts, old files. The more complex answer is that they might contain things that don't fit the curated narrative. Think about the sheer volume of stuff a person like Elvis accumulates. Not just the jumpsuits and guitars, but the mundane things. Documents, receipts, home movies, clothes that weren't iconic, furniture that was replaced. Much of this is now in the official archives, a state-of-the-art facility. But in the early days, before the archives were built, where did it all go? The outbuildings were the logical place. Stories have circulated for years among early employees and Memphis locals about what was once stored there. Unreleased music tapes, personal letters that were too sensitive to display, medical records. The inventory of these buildings has never been made public. In his book, Elvis My Best Man, George Klein, a lifelong friend of Elvis, describes the sprawling, sometimes chaotic nature of life at Graceland. Things were constantly being bought, used for a while, and then stored. The outbuildings were the estate's attic. And like any attic, they hold the things you don't want to throw away, but also don't want to display in the living room. EPE has done a masterful job of cataloging the main collection, but the Unexplained part is the total lack of transparency about what remains in these secondary spaces. They are black boxes on the Graceland map. This secrecy fuels speculation that they might hold items that contradict the sanitized image of Elvis. What is the complete official inventory of the items currently stored in the sealed outbuildings? Are there personal documents or recordings from Elvis's later years that have never been seen or heard by the public? Who has access to these buildings, and how often are their contents reviewed? And was anything stored in these buildings destroyed or sold off in the early years before a comprehensive preservation plan was in place? Here's number 11, where did Elvis's real business office go? On the Graceland tour, you visit the office of Elvis's father, Vernon. It's a small brick building behind the house, meticulously preserved. You see his desk, his chair, the adding machine. This is where the business of Elvis was managed. That's the story the tour tells, and it's true to a point. Vernon did work from there, but Elvis also had his own office, a space inside the main house where he took calls, reviewed contracts, and made plans. That office has vanished. The location of Elvis's personal office was in the basement near the TV room and the pool room. It was a small functional space. It wasn't as glamorous as the jungle room, so it wasn't a priority for the tour. After his death, during the period when Vernon and Aunt Delta were still living in the house, the home was reconfigured. Items were moved, some rooms were repurposed, and Elvis's office was one of the casualties. The space was cleared out, its contents were put into storage in the archives. The room itself was either converted into a storage closet or absorbed into the surrounding area. It no longer exists as a distinct room. The unexplained change is the decision to completely erase a key functional room from the house. Why not preserve it like they preserved the kitchen or the living room? The official reason would likely be practical. It was small, not visually interesting, and didn't fit the flow of the tour. But it was the nerve center for the man himself. Removing it removes a piece of his story. It removes the part of him that was a sharp, engaged businessman, a side often downplayed in favor of the flamboyant performer. Preserving Vernon's office, but not Elvis's, subtly shifts the narrative. It frames Elvis as the artist and his father as the responsible adult managing the money. The reality, as documented in books like Peter Guralnick's Careless Love, is that Elvis was deeply involved in his own career decisions, for better or for worse. By physically removing his office from the floor plan, the curated tour experience removes that agency. It's a subtle but powerful piece of storytelling through architecture. The change happened quietly, before the house was open to the public in 1982. The decision-making process during that chaotic period between 1977 and 1982 is not well documented. It was a time of financial crisis for the estate, and the priority was creating a viable tourist attraction, not perfect historical preservation. They chose to showcase the entertainer, not the executive. Are there photographs of Elvis's office as it was when he was alive? What specific items were in that office, and where are they now in the Graceland archives? Who made the final decision to dismantle the room instead of including it on the tour? And could the space be restored today to give visitors a more complete picture of how Elvis lived and worked? Number 10, how did a home become a high-security compound? When Elvis bought Graceland in 1957, it was an upscale home, but it was relatively open. It had a stone wall and the famous music gates, but security was personal. It was handled by his own friends and family. Where fans could hang out at the gates, and Elvis would often come down to sign autographs and chat. It was a private home, but it was also part of the community. It was accessible. That Graceland is gone. Today, Graceland is a fortress. The change is the level and nature of the security. It has evolved from a personal security detail to a corporate high-tech surveillance system. There are cameras everywhere, many of them hidden. There are motion sensors, pressure plates, and a 24/7 monitoring station. The guards are no longer old friends of Elvis. They are professional security personnel employed by a corporation. The walls seem higher. The access is strictly controlled. The transition from a home to a high-security compound was gradual, but it accelerated after the property became a major international tourist destination. The unexplained part isn't that security was increased. That's logical. The question is about the extent and the secrecy of it. The security measures are not just about protecting the property from theft or vandalism. They are also about controlling the narrative and access. Nothing happens at Graceland that isn't on camera. No one gets into a restricted area. This level of control is far beyond what is needed just to protect the artifacts. It ensures that the only version of Graceland the public ever sees is the officially sanctioned one. This change was driven by EPE's need to protect its primary asset. An incident in the early 1980s where a fan managed to get onto the property prompted a major security review. Jack Soden, in building the business, understood that any security breach would be a public relations disaster. But some argue it has gone too far, creating a sterile and intimidating atmosphere. The relaxed, southern hospitality that Elvis was known for has been replaced by a TSA-like efficiency. The guards at the gate no longer chat, they scan tickets. The book, Graceland, The Living Legacy of Elvis Presley, offers a sanitized look at the operations, but it hints at the complexity of the security apparatus required to manage over 600,000 visitors a year. This system has to protect the house, manage the crowds, and ensure the safety of the visitors themselves. But in doing so, it has fundamentally changed the relationship between the fans and the home. The friendly gate where Elvis once greeted his admirers is now a hardened checkpoint. What specific security technologies are in use at Graceland that the public is not aware of? How many security personnel are on staff, and what kind of training do they receive? Have there been significant security breaches since the 1980s that have not been made public? And does the intense security environment prevent historical researchers or journalists from getting a truly independent look at the property? Number 9 is the Jungle Room, a tamed version of the original. The Jungle Room is one of the most famous rooms at Graceland. With its green shag carpet on the floor and ceiling, its carved wooden furniture, and its indoor waterfall, it's the pinnacle of 1970s kitsch. It's presented as the ultimate party room, a quirky and fun space where Elvis and his friends would relax. The official story is that Elvis saw the furniture in a Memphis store window, bought the entire set, and had it installed in a single day in 1974. And that's how it remains. But is the room we see today the real Jungle Room, or a sanitized, more presentable version? The unexplained change is the taming of the room. By all accounts, including those of his friends in the Memphis Mafia like Red West and Lamar Fique, the Jungle Room was a truly lived-in, and sometimes trashed, space. It was a den, there were spills on the carpet, the furniture was scuffed, it was a place for late-night jam sessions and mock karate fights. It was a man cave, with all the mess that implies. It was also where Elvis made his last official recordings in 1976 for the album From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. RCA brought in mobile recording equipment because Elvis didn't want to go to a studio. The room was a functional working space. The Jungle Room on the tour today is pristine. The green carpet is clean, the furniture is perfectly arranged, the waterfall is off it allegedly leaked and caused humidity problems. It's a museum exhibit of a party room, not the party room itself. The restoration and preservation efforts, while necessary, may have scrubbed away the room's true character. The decision was made to present the room in an idealized state, as if it were brand new. This choice favors aesthetics over authenticity. It shows the concept of the room, but not the reality of how it was used. In Priscilla Presley's book, Elvis and Me, she describes Elvis's impulsive decorating style. The Jungle Room was a prime example. It was comfortable and personal to him, not a designer showcase. By cleaning it up so perfectly, EPE has removed the man from the room. We see the furniture he bought, but not the life he lived in it. The change isn't malicious. It's a standard museum practice, but Graceland isn't a standard museum. It's a home, and homes are supposed to be a little messy, Were the original worn-out shag carpets replaced with identical replicas, or are they the originals just professionally cleaned to an impossible degree? Are there photographs from 1977 taken right after his death that show the true state of the room before it was preserved? Why was the decision made to turn off the waterfall, a key feature of the room, rather than repair it? And how much of the clutter, the ashtrays, the magazines, the half-empty glasses that must have been in the room, was removed and put in storage? Number 8, was this garden always meant to be a cemetery? The meditation garden is the emotional heart of the Graceland tour. It is the final stop. Visitors file past the graves of Elvis and his family, paying their respects. The atmosphere is quiet and reverent. It feels like a space that was always designed for this solemn purpose. A family cemetery? But it wasn't. The meditation garden was just that, a place for meditation. A quiet corner of the backyard. The burials were dramatic, and some say reluctant, change made out of necessity. Elvis was originally buried on August 18, 1977, next to his mother Gladys in Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis. This was a public cemetery. His grave immediately became a target. It was a site of a massive, unmanageable fan pilgrimage. But more dangerously, it was a target for criminals. Just a few weeks after the funeral, on August 29th, police arrested 3 men who were attempting to break into his mausoleum to steal his body. They reportedly intended to hold it for ransom. The incident was a huge shock to the family and the estate. It proved that a public burial site was not secure. Vernon Presley made the difficult decision to move the bodies of both Elvis and Gladys to Graceland. It required a special permit from the city of Memphis. The move happened late at night on October 2nd, 1977, under tight security. They were re-interred in the space that had been the meditation garden. So the change is clear: a garden became a cemetery. The unexplained part is the degree to which this was a panicked, last-minute decision versus a contingency that had been considered. Some accounts suggest Elvis had casually mentioned wanting to be buried at Graceland, but there was no formal plan. The design of the garden as a burial plot had to be created on the fly. This change had a massive, permanent impact on the property. It consecrated the grounds. It transformed the home from a tourist attraction into a shrine. The decision to open Graceland to the public in 1982 was partly driven by the high costs of maintaining the security for the gravesite. The home had to pay for its own protection. The garden's design, with the eternal flame and the fountain, was adapted to its new solemn purpose. It was a beautiful solution to a gruesome problem, but it was a reactive change born of a security crisis that forever altered the character of the home. Did Elvis ever leave written instructions about his desired burial place? How much did it cost to get the special zoning permit and to physically move 2 bodies and their caskets in 1977? Who designed the final layout of the graves in the garden, and how quickly was it done? And what were the other security options considered by the estate before they decided to move the graves to Graceland itself? Number 7, what happened to the things Elvis actually touched? When you walk through Graceland, you are separated from the rooms by velvet ropes or plexiglass. You see Elvis's furniture, his television sets, his kitchen appliances. You are seeing the collection. But what about the small stuff, the everyday items, the half-read paperback on his nightstand? The pen he used to sign a check? The glass he drank from on his last day? What happened to the thousands of mundane objects that made up his daily life, the things he actually touched? The change is the curation of his personal effects. After his death, the house was inventoried. This massive task fell to his family and the nascent estate managers. Decisions had to be made. What was important? What was valuable? What was just junk? The items deemed significant were preserved for display. The iconic jumpsuits, the guitars, the jewelry, but a huge volume of his personal property was not deemed significant. These items were either sold, given away to friends and family, or simply discarded. In the years immediately following his death, before EPE was the well-oiled machine it is today, there were auctions. Vernon Presley, struggling with the estate's debts, authorized the sale of various personal items. A famous 1981 auction sold off cars, furniture, and other belongings not considered essential to the Graceland tour. No friends and employees were also allowed to take mementos. This process was not always well documented. As a result, thousands of authentic Elvis Presley items, things he owned and used, are now in the hands of private collectors all over the world. The collection you see at Graceland is a fraction of what the house once held. The unexplained part is the lack of a clear public record of what was removed and why. The process was opaque. Who decided that one particular shirt was worth keeping for the museum, while another was okay to sell? Who cataloged the books in his library, and were any of them given away? The official archive at Graceland is vast, but it is not complete. The dispersal of his personal belongings in those early years represents a significant, irreversible change to the historical record of his life. It means that to see the full picture of Elvis's world, you can't just go to Graceland. You also have to go to auction houses and private museums. How was the initial inventory of Graceland's contents conducted in 1977? Is there a master list of all the items that were sold or given away from the estate between 1977 and 1982? What is the most valuable or personally significant item that is known to have left the official collection? And does Elvis Presley Enterprises ever attempt to buy back important items when they appear at auction? Number 6, who controls the story? We hear on the tour. When you take the Graceland tour today, you are given an iPad and a set of headphones. The tour is narrated by the actor John Stamos, with commentary from Lisa Marie Presley, recorded before her passing. The narration guides you through the house, telling you stories about each room. It is a slick, professional, and tightly controlled narrative. But this wasn't always the case. In the early days, the tours were led by live tour guides, and they had a lot more freedom. The change is the shift from a human, variable narrative to a single, scripted, unchangeable one. The early tour guides were local women, many of whom were longtime fans. Their tours were personal, filled with their own anecdotes, and flavored with their Memphis accents. They could answer questions, they could go off script. The experience was different every time. As described in the book Elvis Culture Fans, Faith and Image by Erica Doss, these guides were a key part of the early Graceland experience. They were authentic, but they were also unpredictable. They might mention things that didn't fit the official image. They might talk about Elvis's weight gain, his temper, or his well-known fondness for young girls. Sometime in the 1990s, EPE made the corporate decision to replace the live guides with a recorded tour. The official reason was efficiency. The recorded tour could be offered in multiple languages, and it allowed visitors to move at their own pace. But it also served another, more important purpose. It gave EP total control over the story. The John Stamos narration is carefully written. It focuses on Elvis, the family man, the generous friend, the musical genius, the icon. It smooths over the rough edges. The controversial, aspects of his life are completely absent. The narrative is polished, positive, and brand safe. The unexplained part is the degree to which this was a deliberate act of historical sanitization. By removing the human element, they removed the possibility of dissent or complexity. The story of Graceland is no longer a conversation. It's a broadcast. You are told what to think about each room. This change ensures that every one of the 600,000 visitors who pass through each year receives the exact same, officially approved version of the Elvis story. It's a brilliant marketing strategy, but it's a questionable historical practice. It transforms the home from a place of memory into a piece of propaganda. What kind of training did the original tour guides receive, and how much were they allowed to editorialize? Are there any recordings of the old unscripted tours? Who wrote the script for the current recorded tour, and what specific topics were they instructed to avoid? And by presenting such a sanitized version of his life, does the official tour do a disservice to the complexity of the man himself? Number 5, how did 2 airplanes land permanently across the street? Across the street from the Graceland mansion sit 2 airplanes. One is the Lisa Marie, a converted Convair 880 jet. The other is the Hound Dog II, a smaller Lockheed Jetstar. They are a major part of the tourist attraction. You can tour the interiors and see the lavish, custom fittings Elvis ordered, including a queen-size bed and a bathroom with gold-plated fixtures. The planes are symbols of his incredible wealth and fame, but they were never part of the Graceland estate when he was alive. He kept them at the Memphis International Airport, so how did they end up parked permanently on Elvis Presley Boulevard? The change is the relocation of these massive machines from an airport to a roadside attraction. After Elvis's death, the planes were sold by his father, Vernon, in 1978. The estate was short on cash. They were bought by a private company. For years, they sat in various locations, falling into disrepair. EPE eventually realized the planes were a huge missed opportunity. They were a tangible piece of the Elvis lifestyle that fans would love to see. But the new owners controlled them. A long and complicated legal and financial negotiation began. The details have never been fully public. EPE eventually struck a deal in the 1980s to bring the planes back to Memphis and display them. They didn't buy them back outright at first. It was a partnership, a profit-sharing agreement with the owners. The planes were flown one last time to the Memphis airport, then partially disassembled and hauled on trucks down the road to their current location. A special concrete plaza had to be built to support their weight. This happened in 1984. It was only in 2015 that EPE finally secured permanent ownership of the planes. The unexplained part lies in the specific financial details of the decades-long deal. For years, a portion of the ticket sales to see the planes went to outside owners, not to the Elvis estate. This arrangement was a source of tension and was renegotiated multiple times. The story of the planes is a perfect example of how the estate had to fight to reclaim and consolidate the assets of the Elvis brand. It was a business deal, not a historical preservation effort. The planes are not at Graceland because Elvis wanted them there. They are there because they make money. They are a brilliant, audacious, and completely artificial addition to the Graceland experience. And who were the original buyers of the planes in 1978? And how much did they pay? What were the terms of the original profit-sharing agreement that allowed EPE to display the planes? How much did it cost to move the planes from the airport and set them up for display? And if the financial negotiations had failed, what would have happened to these iconic aircraft? Number 4. Why is the swimming pool so different? Look at the famous photos of Elvis lounging by his swimming pool in the late 1950s and 60s. It's a classic kidney-shaped pool, surrounded by a simple concrete patio. There's a diving board. It's the quintessential suburban backyard pool of the era. Now look at the pool at Graceland today. The shape is the same, but the entire area has been transformed. The simple patio is gone, replaced with elaborate flagstone. The diving board is gone. The area is enclosed by a stone wall and lush landscaping. It feels less like a backyard pool and more like a resort grotto. The change is the total redesign of the pool area. This didn't happen in one go. It evolved over time. The diving board was removed relatively early, likely for safety and insurance reasons once the tours began. The simple concrete was eventually replaced with the more upscale stonework. The landscaping has been continuously updated to create a more secluded and picturesque setting. The pool we see today is a beautified, romanticized version of the one Elvis actually used. The unexplained part is the lack of acknowledgement that this area has been so heavily altered. It is presented as Elvis's pool, as if this is how it always looked, but the changes are significant. They reflect a desire to make every part of the Graceland property picture perfect for tourists. A cracked concrete patio is authentic, but it isn't pretty. A simple diving board is real, but it's a liability. The decisions were practical and aesthetic, but in making them, EPE erased the genuine, slightly mundane reality of Elvis's backyard. He had a normal pool. The tour shows you a fantasy pool. This falls into a pattern at Graceland. When faced with a choice between perfect authenticity and an idealized, more marketable image, the marketable image often wins. The pool area is a prime example. No one would complain that the original was ugly. But the current version is undeniably more impressive. It fits the King's Castle narrative better. The change was gradual, a slow renovation over decades, which is why it's not as jarring as walling in a carport. But the cumulative effect is a space that Elvis himself would not fully recognize. Are there any official EPE documents that outline the master plan for the upgrading of the Graceland grounds? Why? Specifically, was the original diving board removed? And when did this happen? Who designed the new flagstone patio and landscaping? And were they instructed to use original photos as a reference? And does the tour's narration mention that the pool area has been significantly renovated since 1977? Number 3. Was the kitchen really frozen in time? The Graceland kitchen is a fan favorite. With its dark wood cabinets, stained glass, and early generation microwave oven, it's a perfect slice of 1970s interior design. The tour tells you this is the kitchen just as Elvis left it. It was the heart of the home, running 24/7 to feed Elvis and his entourage. The story is compelling, the room feels authentic, but there are nagging questions about just how untouched it really is. The major change in question is a rumored renovation that happened shortly before Elvis's death. Some accounts, including testimony from some of his cooks and staff, suggest that the kitchen was in the middle of a major overhaul in the summer of 1977. New appliances were being ordered. Plans were being drawn up to modernize the space. Elvis was apparently tired of the dark, woody look and wanted something brighter and more modern. If this is true, then the kitchen we see today is not the one he left, it's the one he was about to get rid of. This puts EPE in a difficult position. Do they present the kitchen as it was on August 16th, 1977, knowing that it was a temporary state he was unhappy with? Or do they try to recreate the kitchen from an earlier period when he did like it? They chose the former. They froze the kitchen at the moment of his death, but by not telling the full story, they create a slightly misleading impression. We see the room as a finished, beloved space when it may have been a construction zone in waiting. The book The Graceland Gates by Daniel Klein hints at the constant state of flux within the house. Elvis was always redecorating, always changing things. The idea that any room was frozen for a long period is unlikely. The kitchen, as the most functional room in the house, would have been subject to the most wear and tear and the most likely to be updated. The decision to preserve the 1970s version was likely made because it is so visually distinctive and evocative of the era. A more modern, renovated kitchen would have been less interesting to tourists. The unexplained part is the official silence on the rumored renovation. It is never mentioned on the tour. Are there any surviving architectural plans or invoices from 1977 for a planned kitchen renovation? What happened to the new appliances that were allegedly ordered? Have any of the former kitchen staff ever gone on the record to describe the planned changes in detail? And does preserving a room that Elvis was actively trying to change truly honor his memory? Number 2, what really remains sealed off upstairs? This is the greatest mystery of Graceland. The upstairs. The tour ends at the bottom of the main staircase. A guide will tell you that the upstairs was Elvis's private sanctuary, and in respect for him and his family, it remains private. It contains his bedroom, his bathroom, his office, and Lisa Marie's childhood bedroom. It has been sealed since the day he died, and that's the story, but the details are what make it an enduring, unexplained puzzle. The primary change is the sealing itself. A home that was once fully accessible to its owner is now a building with a forbidden zone. But what does sealed actually mean? It's not bricked up. The family, particularly Priscilla and Lisa Marie, had access. A professional cleaning and conservation crew also has access on a regular, but highly restricted, basis. They are there to prevent decay, to dust, to check for pests, to maintain the climate control. So, it is not a pristine, untouched tomb. It is a managed, curated, private space. The unexplained part is what is actually there and in what condition. The official line is that it is preserved as he left it. But this is almost certainly not true. The room where he died was a scene of medical emergency and then a death investigation. It would have been in disarray, it would have been cleaned, items would have been moved. The idea that it's a perfect snapshot of his last moments is a myth. So what version of the upstairs has been preserved? Was it restored to look as it did the morning before he died, or is it kept in a more neutral, museum-ready state? Stories from the few who have been up there are scarce and often contradictory. Some say his bed is unmade. Some say there are stacks of books and records by his bed. Some say there are religious texts he was reading. Some, like his last girlfriend Ginger Alden, have described the scene in books, but her version is contested by others. The truth is, EPE and the Presley family have maintained an incredible level of secrecy for over 4 decades. This secrecy has fueled wild speculation. From the mundane, it's just a few messy rooms, to the macabre. The myth is now more powerful than any reality. By keeping it sealed, they have created the ultimate mystery, which is, in itself, a powerful tourist draw. The one thing you can't see is the one thing everyone wants to see. Who is on the approved list of people allowed to go upstairs, and how often do they access it? Are there photographs or videos of the upstairs rooms that have been taken for archival purposes? What is the official EPE policy on what would happen to the upstairs if the Graceland tour were to ever permanently close? And is the primary reason for keeping it sealed truly respect for Elvis, or is it the fear that the mundane reality of the space could never live up to the profitable myth? Number 1, why was Lisa Marie buried where she was? On January 22nd, 2023, Lisa Marie Presley was laid to rest at Graceland. Her public memorial was held on the front lawn. She was buried in the meditation garden with her family, but her specific gravesite created a final, heartbreaking, and unexplained change to the sacred space. She was not buried next to her father, Elvis. She was not buried in line with her grandparents. She was buried on the other side of the fountain, directly across from her father's grave, next to her son, Benjamin Keogh, who died in 2020. Her grave is now the first one visitors see when they enter the garden from one side. This arrangement is a significant change to the layout and symmetry of the family plot. The original graves of Elvis, his parents, and his grandmother form a clear line, a generational grouping. When Lisa Marie's placement is separate, it breaks that pattern. The official explanation is a beautiful one. She wanted to be buried next to her beloved son, Ben. And that makes perfect emotional sense. The two are now together. But in a place as meticulously planned and curated as Graceland, every decision has layers of meaning. The unexplained part is whether there were other factors at play. The space in the original family plot was extremely limited. Was there physically no room for her in the main line? Or was this placement a deliberate symbolic choice? By placing her across from her father, it creates a powerful visual tableau, the father and daughter, forever watching over each other, with the fountain, a symbol of life between them. It also puts her and her personal tragedy of losing her son front and center. It changes the focus of the garden from being solely a memorial to Elvis to being a memorial for the entire Presley family's history of love and loss. This decision came at a time of reported family turmoil. After Lisa Marie's death, there was a public legal dispute between her mother, Priscilla Presley, and her daughter, Riley Keough, over control of her trust, which included Graceland. The decision about the gravesite was made in the midst of this grief and conflict. It's impossible to know how those family dynamics influenced the final choice. But it is the most significant and visible change to the meditation garden since the original burials in 1977. It rewrites the garden story for all future generations. It makes the garden Lisa Marie's as much as it is Elvis's. Was the final placement of Lisa Marie's grave her own specific written instruction, or was it a decision made by her surviving family? Were other locations within the garden considered for her and Benjamin's graves? How has the change in the garden's layout affected the flow of visitors and the emotional tone of the space? And will this new arrangement, with its focus on Lisa Marie and her son, permanently shift the narrative of Graceland from the story of a king to the saga of a family?